Welcome back to another episode of Critical Weight Theory and our little show within a show that I call Creepy Creatures and Myths. And I just got out of the shower, so I feel a little less like a creepy creature myself. And this time we're going to be looking at the Black Volga, or Devil on Four Wheels, as you might call it. So, what is that? What is that myth? Ever hear the one about the black car that stole children off the street? Possibly no license plate, or at least in some versions it doesn't have a license plate. There's no trace, just black paint, white rims, and a building sense of dread. Spooky, spooky vehicle. So today on Creepy Creatures and Myths, which again is a show within a show, we're digging into one of Eastern Europe's most chilling urban legends, the Black Volga. So, if you grew up in Poland, Russia, Ukraine, or just about anywhere behind the Iron Curtain in the 60s and 70s, you might already know the name. You probably do. You might not talk about it lightly either because it's something apparently some people do believe in. You may have heard the whispers, the car, government grade, black as night. It would appear from nowhere, prowl through neighborhoods, and vanish again, sometimes with a child in the back seat who was never seen again. Again, spooky, enough to send a shiver up someone's spine. The car itself was real. The Volga GAZ-21 or GAZ-24 was a luxury Soviet vehicle reserved for high-ranking officials, the KGB, and party elites. You didn't see one parked casually on your street. That alone made it suspicious, powerful, perhaps untouchable. And maybe that's where the legend began. If you hear a distant engine revving, maybe it was the Black Volga taking somebody away. And could it be you? Could it be your child? Whew, it's a scary thought. But this wasn't just any government car. This one had curtains in the windows. Some versions claimed it had horns instead of side mirrors, which to me I have to admit is a little bit corny. It's one of those instances where a legend might take things a little bit too far in sort of a silly direction. You know, the real evil cars, would they actually have horns on them? Would they really do that? I kind of don't think so. Granted, if they had fuzzy dice on them, it would also be corny or something like those fuzzy dice hanging from the dash or truck nuts or something like that. That obviously would not be spooky either, but I would say that horns are not very spooky. But, to some people, I guess they are. And I guess if the Black Volga did actually show up to take you away, it, it really wouldn't matter what the appearance of the vehicle actually was. You'd be more concerned about what's happening to you. So sometimes the number 666 was spotted somewhere on it, maybe on the license plate. Like I said before, sometimes people said it had no license plate. Others said, oh, it had a 666. Or who knows, maybe some other number that was deemed spooky. I suppose some people fear the number 13 sometimes. I guess, any number of things that were deemed unlucky or spooky might have been attributed to the vehicle or its inhabitants. If there were inhabitants, maybe it was just a ghost. There was no visible person behind the wheel, you know. The people inside, they were never the same in every story. Sometimes it'd be the KGB, Satanists, priests, vampires. Sometimes maybe the devil himself behind the wheel, or some demons or something like that. So why would they do it? Some said they were harvesting blood or organs for dying Western elites, or you know, certain ethnic groups that I'm not going to uh, really get into right now because there were some racist components to some of these. And, I'll leave you to decide which version you want to focus on as far as that goes. Because there were, it's basically like a choose your own adventure story. And if people wanted to plug in some bigotry into their myth of the Black Volga, they could. They could. Basically anybody could have been in the driver's seat. So it was really up to the narrator of the legend. So, I mean, to add a twist to this, there are instances where people actually do steal organs from people. So it's one of those things that adds a little bit of, like a little hint of truth to this, a shade of truth to what otherwise would seem like a totally far fetched tale. And others believed it was a demonic pact of some sort. Like maybe you could place a curse on somebody and the Black Volga would show up and take them away. You know, it, the imagination, it could build up any number of stories here. And others still, they might have said it was just the state doing what it did best, making people disappear. So I would assume some people would actually be uneasy talking about the Black Volga because there are some elements of reality to, the disappearance of people. It might not be just some superstitious story. Kidnappings actually do happen, as we're finding out more and more, in the modern era. So there's no hard evidence that a single kidnapping ever occurred from a Black Volga, or is there? I guess it depends on who you talk to. But what we can say is that the fear was real and palpable. A lot of people were actually afraid that this could happen to them. So, that there is a danger of maybe having too much of a mocking tone here because like I've said already, the fear was real and the possibility, the potential for something like this to happen is of course there. It's a real risk that if you're out on the street, somebody could kidnap you or whatever. So, but let's face another fact. This was also the Cold War. People vanished for reasons no one would explain, you know, and sometimes the tales were, of course, muddied because there was hysteria happening at the same time. So, what was truth and what was not truth, the lines could be blurred at times. Kids were taught about stranger danger long before it became an American PSA. The Soviet world was filled with secrets and shadows, and the Black Volga lived right at that intersection where state terror met supernatural horror. And of course, the United States probably has its own equivalents of the Black Volga. I remember watching at least one horror movie where there was an ambulance that would show up and kidnap people. Now, I don't know how widespread that particular myth is, but I've seen at least a few movies where that was actually a thing. An ambulance, in some cases. Well, there was also a movie called The Corpse Vanishes, starring Bela Lugosi, where, if I remember correctly, he was, driving around in a hearse and people would disappear. And, that there are different variations on the Black Volga with different types of cars. And, it reminds you that there's a sort of universality to this type of legend. It could be mutating here and there, and you could give different types of people and different cars and different types of victims and blah 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 blah. I don't want to repeat myself too much here, but it is interesting. And it was the Eastern Bloc's answer to the American Nightmare: less Hollywood, more hush hush; less Freddy Krueger, more don't ask questions. Some believe it all got mixed up with real political disappearances, that maybe, just maybe, there was a Black Volga involved in something at least once, and the myth just did the rest. Folklore tends to fill in the blanks when the truth is too dark or too quiet. So, if you're ever hearing child laughter, stop, and you see and you see a Black Volga driving away. That's like the start of a horror movie right there. If you ever were to witness that, you might have to wonder, am I living in a horror movie? Because that really is the definitive spooky aspect of the Black Volga legend. So, like the dreadful story of Pauline and the Matches, or any other cautionary tale, you may tell it to warn people: don't go out alone, don't trust strangers, don't look too long at the wrong car. There could be consequences. And yet, decades later, the Black Volga probably still has its grip. So, why might a story like this last? Because it represents something deeper than just a scary car. It's a symbol of repression, of secrecy, of things you weren't supposed to see but saw anyway. And next time you're walking home late and a car slows beside you, maybe, just maybe, take a second look. Or maybe the advice will be, don't you dare take a look into the vehicle, because maybe that's how it'll get you. Who knows? And if it's black with white rims and curtains in the windows, you don't want to wait around to find out. Try to get away, you know? Because maybe the legend is true. Maybe the Black Volga is out there just waiting, and maybe it's waiting to find you. How spooky. So, thanks for listening to, this look at this shadowy urban legend. If you've heard your own version of the Black Volga legend, or know another story from the streets that never made the news, feel free to send it my way. And until next time, keep your eyes open, because the truth hides in the shadows.